Hey guys, Chickadee Maine, aka Deboo, Deboo.com, the Deboo.com Surf Forecast Update. This forecast update effective around 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, May 14, 2015. And guys, here we go into the real-time phase of our previous forecast. A decent northerly surge has developed this morning along the coast. Gray's Reef, east-northeast 15 to 20 knots. Frying Pan Shoals, east-northeast 15 to 20 knots. Had gust up to 25 earlier. South Hatteras Buoy, northeast 15 to 20 knots, and the Paul West Bermuda buoy showing north winds at 10 to 15 knots. These are your indicator buoys for everything south of latitude 30. So we'll be keeping an eye on those. Those are going to create or give us a small little bump coming with that northerly surge. And as you can see, we've got an area of spin now just north of Bermuda. This is that gale that we were talking about in our previous forecast. Now, what we want you guys to pay attention to is what we are seeing now could be indicative of what we're going to see next week, with the possibility of maybe seeing Bill come out of this. Now, I know you guys think that, that might be hype, but we are going to show you that in the model today, the possibility of that. When we take a little closer look at the east coast of Florida, notice how we've got this little spin in here. That's associated with the tail end of the front. Rule of thumb during tropical season, although it's not June 1st yet, but also you saw with Anna last week that the calendar doesn't matter. But notice this little spin in here. The rule of thumb is during tropical season, you always watch the tail ends of fronts or along stalled fronts for an area of low pressure to develop. So this is something that we're going to be watching next week. We'll point that out to you in the model here in just a second. And then down in here in the intertropical convergence zone, look how convection is flaring up today. Again, high pressure coming in here, then filtering into the Gulf of Mexico. But this is also helping to create some spin in here. And we may see an area of low pressure move in here towards the Southwest Caribbean next week. Those are going to be the two scenarios for a possible Bill outcome. Jumping you over to this afternoon's model run, here it is at plus 24. Here's this gale now just to the northeast of Bermuda. On Saturday, you can see that it starts to tighten up a bit. Now, that northerly surge that we're getting along the east coast in here down into to Florida over the next 24 to 48 hours, we haven't had any real swell be able to be produced and start to head our way yet. But as you'll see, as we get deeper into the forecast model, this gets into a little bit northerly latitude and is southeast of Nova Scotia on Sunday. Now, this is starting to produce some northeast groundswell that's going to be heading our way. High pressure off the mid-Atlantic with some east-southeast return flow in here towards Florida and through the Gulf of Mexico. GOMEX fans, I know that you guys have been patiently waiting. It looks like you got a little bump coming from this high pressure wind swell setting up in the Gulf of Mexico during this time period, first couple of days of next week. Jumping you over to Monday, here's where things get interesting, guys. Another area of low pressure. We'll back this up. You'll see over New England in here, there's some lower pressures right here. Into Monday, the model moves a secondary low in here just to the north of Bermuda. This is setting up a longer, wider northeast fetch in here aimed at the Outer Banks and then aimed in here at Florida and the southeast states. When we go in here towards Tuesday, it drops it out. But there's groundswell generated. The latest swell forecast out of the Ocean Prediction Center showing over the next 72 to 96 hours, some 10 to 12 second northeast groundswell developing. But also take note, as this starts to move away, the associated front now is dragging in here through the Outer Banks and then down in here through Georgia in here. And then when we move to 144, again, it moves out. This is Wednesday. Notice how pressures are starting to drop here off the Georgia coast and then down in here towards the Southwest Caribbean. Pay close attention to that because here we are going into Thursday of next week. A little bit more deepening, some nice northerly fetch in here aimed at Puerto Rico, which you guys in the islands, you're going to get some of this. And then once we get into Thursday of next week, notice the little black circles trying to close it off. Now, when we go to Friday, you can see that this one down here is still hanging in here and then this one in here is no longer closed. There's no sense in going any further with the model. The model's already showing us what we already want to see. These are two areas that we're going to be watching next week and monitoring for what could end up possibly being Bill. Now take a look at this, guys. Check it out. Here's where this gale is developing. Northeast groundswell developing. And as we talked about, as this is going to go away, if we get another area of low pressure that'll develop off the southeast coast, just like we had with Anna, you're going to get some of that northeast wrap come from that. Or if we get an area of low pressure, southwest Caribbean, and we can get it to lift north. And models were hinting several days ago on May 26th, the GFS was showing an area of low pressure in the central Bahamas coming from this. So again, the models are hinting at that, but lifting up, again, northeast groundswell in here. And then as the low lifts up, northeast groundswell, combining with northeast groundswell. That's what we're talking about. If you go back and look, and we'll be watching for this later on in the end of the season at peak of hurricane season, because that's exactly what happened with Sandy. We had Hurricane Raphael right in here. So imagine that gale creating northeast groundswell, and you had Sandy move out of the southwest Carib up over Cuba and started grabbing northeast groundswell already generated and wrapping it back into her and sending it towards the coast. That's all we got for you for now, guys. Stay tuned for the next update.